Not every craving is about hunger. Some of them are about a smell, a sensation, a version of the past, or a feeling you can't get any other way. Most of them have actual names, actual mechanisms behind them, studied by real researchers who wanted to know why we want the things we want, even when we can't explain it ourselves. Here are 9 of them. Pica, you're standing at the freezer, and instead of reaching for the ice cream, you reach for the ice itself, and something about crunching it feels almost necessary. Not just satisfying, or it's chalk or dirt or the smell of a fresh bag of cement, and you know it's strange, but the pull is real. This is called Pica, a genuine medical condition defined as craving and eating substances with no nutritional value. It's most commonly linked to iron deficiency. Once iron levels are corrected with supplements, the craving for ice specifically, known as pagophagia, often disappears within days. Doctors still don't fully understand the exact mechanism, but the correlation is strong enough that Pica is treated as a diagnostic clue, not just a habit. What makes it different from a normal food craving is that it's not about taste at all. People with Pica often say ice or dirt doesn't taste like anything special. It's the texture, the coldness, or simply the act of chewing it that the body seems to be asking for. Sodium appetite, you've just finished a hard workout or a long hot day outside, and suddenly all you want is something salty, chips, pretzels, straight up salt on your tongue, more than you'd normally want on any other day. This is sodium appetite, and unlike most cravings, it has a clean, well-mapped physiological pathway. When your body loses sodium through sweat, your adrenal glands release more aldosterone, a hormone that signals your brain to specifically seek out salt. Researchers have found this drive is so hardwired that even newborns show a measurable preference shift towards saltier solutions after sodium loss, before they've learned anything about taste at all. What makes it different from general hunger is precision. You're not craving food in general. Your body has identified exactly which mineral is low and is sending a request for that one thing specifically, the same way thirst asks for water and nothing else. The Casomorphin Pull. Cheese, specifically, has a way of feeling non-negotiable. Not, "I'd like some," more like a low hum of wanting that doesn't fully go away until you've had it. Digested casein, the main protein in dairy, breaks down into compounds called casomorphins, which bind to the same opioid receptors in your brain that respond to actual opiates, just far more weakly. Researchers studying food addiction models have found casein-derived peptides can produce mild reward and craving responses, part of why cheese in particular shows up so often on lists of foods people describe as addictive. What makes it different from a taste preference is the mechanism, not just the flavor pulling you in, but an actual receptor-level echo of the way opioids work. It's mild, it's not chemical addiction in the clinical sense, but it's also not just in your head. The Proust Effect is a specific smell hits you, someone's laundry detergent, a particular kind of rain, a dish you haven't eaten since childhood, and suddenly you don't just remember a memory, you're craving to be back inside it, fully, for just a second. This is known as the Proust Effect, named after novelist Marcel Proust, who famously described an entire flood of childhood memory triggered by the taste of a Madeleine cake dipped in tea. Neuroscience has since backed up why smell does this more than any other sense. The olfactory bulb has a direct anatomical connection to the amygdala and hippocampus, the brain's centers for emotion and memory, bypassing the more roundabout paths other senses take. What makes it different from ordinary nostalgia is the involuntary trigger. You don't choose to remember, the smell reaches directly into memory and emotion before your conscious mind even catches up, and the craving that follows is for the moment, not just the memory of it. Skin hunger. You haven't been hugged in a while, and you don't fully notice it as a problem until someone does hug you, and something in your chest reacts almost too strongly for how small the moment was. This is called skin hunger, a term used by touch researchers, most notably Tiffany Field at the Touch Research Institute, to describe the physiological craving for physical contact. Human skin is dense with pressure receptors that, when stimulated through touch, trigger the release of oxytocin and lower cortisol, the stress hormone. Studies on touch deprivation have found measurable increases in anxiety and lowered immune markers in people who go extended periods without physical contact. What makes it different from loneliness is that it's specifically physical, not social. You can be surrounded by people, texting constantly, deeply not alone, and still be touch-starved because conversation and contact satisfy two different systems in the body. Sensation-seeking. You buy the ticket for the roller coaster, or the horror movie, or the trip with no real plan, not because you're not scared, but because some part of you needs the spike more than it needs comfort. Psychologist Marvin Zuckerman spent decades researching this and defined it as a personality trait called sensation-seeking, a measurable, consistent craving for varied, novel, and intense experiences, even at some physical or social risk. His research found it correlates with dopamine regulation differences. People high in this trait often need more stimulation to reach the same level of reward that calmer activities give other people. What makes it different from recklessness is that it's not about ignoring danger. It's a genuine physiological need for intensity, the same way some people need more caffeine to feel the same effect as everyone else. Restorative nostalgia. You find yourself wanting, specifically, a version of somewhere, your childhood house, a relationship the way it used to be, a city the way it existed 10 years ago, not similar, that exact version, frozen. Cultural theorist Svetlana Boym drew a distinction here that most people never learn: restorative nostalgia, the craving to literally rebuild or return to the past as it was, versus reflective nostalgia, which is content to simply long for it from a distance. Restorative nostalgia is the sharper, more urgent one. It doesn't want to remember, it wants to reconstruct. What makes it different from ordinary sentimentality is the direction of the craving. Sentimentality looks back and feels something. Restorative nostalgia looks back and wants to go there, actively, which is part of why it can feel more like a craving than a feeling. Anticipatory dopamine shopping. You add things to a cart online, and honestly, half the satisfaction happens right there before checkout, before the box even ships. Sometimes the box arrives and you barely feel anything at all. Neuroscience research using brain imaging has found that dopamine spikes during the anticipation of a reward, not primarily during the reward itself, and shopping is one of the cleanest examples. The scanning, comparing, and adding to cart activates the anticipation system hardest, while the actual purchase and delivery often produces a smaller response than expected. What makes it different from wanting the item is that the craving was never really about the object. It was about the anticipation loop itself, which is why the high fades so fast after the package arrives, and why the next scroll starts again almost immediately. The urge for a good cry. Nothing's really wrong, but you find yourself putting on the sad song, or the movie you know will do it, almost on purpose, chasing something specific, not sadness exactly, more like release. Psychologist Jonathan Rottenberg and other emotion researchers have studied this craving for catharsis and found that emotional crying, unlike reflex tears from onions or wind, is followed by measurable increases in mood and a documented drop in stress-related arousal for many people, not everyone, but enough to explain why the pull toward a good cry is so specific and so common. There isn't one clean clinical name for the craving itself, only for what it produces, but it shows up in almost everyone at some point, the recognition that some feelings only fully move through you once they're let out. And until then, some part of you keeps quietly asking for the release.